Welcome to Fireside Gaming. I'm Billum, and we're finally getting around to covering Mega Man X6. I won't lie, this has long been a Mega Man game I've hated, and I dreaded having to review it. Why, you might ask? Because I've never beat Mega Man X6 in the more than 20 years since its release. It's not that I didn't try, by the way, but I always found myself giving up on it. Too often I would grow frustrated with the amount of bull that the game would throw at me, and this time was no different. Even so, I persevered and finally laid this game to rest. So what are my thoughts on this game now that I've finally beaten it? We'll get into that later, as I first want to discuss the story of Mega Man X6. Expect spoilers. Before we get too far into this, I do have to warn that Mega Man X6 has a poor translation that makes it a bit awkward at times. Despite that, it's still perfectly playable and makes it follow the same trend as just about every other X game. Mega Man X6 picks up 3 weeks after the end of Mega Man X5, which I have a review of and it covers the story if you're looking for that. This is the first red flag players get, as the end of X5 takes place 3 years after the events of the game. So we're starting with a retcon, which isn't a good sign, or this is another case of a game's ending taking place after any of the other games that weren't made yet. And if that sounds weird, I'll explain that later. We actually start our journey following the Reploid scientist Gate. He's exploring the debris left over from the Eurasia space colony that crashed in X5. During this, he laments the poor job done by the Maverick Hunters. He also believes that the danger isn't over yet. While poking around in the ruins, Gate finds a strange part and wonders if a violent battle took place at this location. After examining the part closer, Gate has a revelation about what it is, but doesn't explain his findings. Fast forward 1 week and Gate has gone mad with power, going on about his perfect creation and how he'll take over the world to create a place for strong Reploids that serve him. At this time, X and the Maverick Hunters are operating on the surface of the Earth as they deal with the fallout of the Eurasia colony. They have to do this as humanity has fled underground to escape the devastation covering the planet. As we switch perspectives, we turn to X's dreams, which has Zero calling out to him, telling him that only he remains and that he's needed for battle. X is awoken by Alia as a new Maverick has appeared. X is tasked with taking down the mechanical monster and does so with the help of his Falcon armor and Zero? Or at least something that looks like Zero. Following this, a new Reploid named Hymax appears. He claims to be investigating the Zero phenomenon, which he calls Zero Nightmares. Hymax believes X is connected to this somehow and tries to dispose of him. And he almost succeeds, as X is unable to harm Hymax, but our blue hero is spared. Afterwards, we're treated to a scene of Isaac, a Reploid scientist, announcing his investigation into the nightmares. He believes that they're caused by the ghost of Zero and represent a threat to both Reploids and humans. That includes causing Reploids to go Maverick or even deleting themselves. To get to the bottom of things, he sends out 8 investigators into areas where the nightmares have appeared. Leading this investigation is Hymax, and Isaac is seeking Reploid volunteers to help him in this matter. Alia, X, Cygnus, and Douglas aren't buying what Isaac is selling. This has X determined to investigate the nightmares as well as prove Zero's innocence. After defeating the first of the investigators, we flip back over to Isaac to see that, surprise surprise, he's working with Gate. Gate intends to use Hymax to control all Reploids, and Isaac is assisting with his research and experiments. We also learn that Isaac is searching for Zero as he doesn't believe the Maverick Hunter died in the prior battle with Sigma. It's also worth pointing out real quick that Alia has connections to the Zero Nightmare investigators. That's because her and Gate used to be colleagues. This has her providing extra background information on them once X has defeated them. Also, the investigators speak to X prior to the battles, which also gives us insight into why they're working with Gate. During our investigations, we run into the Zero Nightmare once more. It's searching for Zero and tries to defeat X. We end up defeating it, and Zero reappears, saying that his reputation has been damaged while he was away. X is surprised but happy to see Zero alive, saying that he searched for him. Zero simply tells X that he hid himself while he repaired himself. This has Zero rejoining the Maverick Hunters to stop the Zero Nightmare. During the investigations, X and Zero eventually run into Hymax out in the field. He challenges them, but is defeated. This angers Isaac, who swears he'll defeat X before the two make a hasty retreat. After this, Gate reveals himself as the mastermind behind the investigators and tells X and Zero about his plan to create a perfect world for Reploids. The two Maverick Hunters swear to stand against Gate and make for his secret lab. After making their way through Gate's lab, X and Zero eventually make contact with the scientist. Following a bit of banter, Gate reveals that he created both Hymax and the Nightmare. He was able to do this after discovering a piece of Zero that was left behind after the battle with Sigma at the end of X5. After this, they dive even deeper into Gate's lab, taking Hymax down one last time along the way. Finally, they run into Gate, who's ready to battle now that all of his Reploids have been destroyed. He combines with Zero's DNA, acquiring a new golden armor, but X and Zero still take him down. Even so, the scientist has one more trick up his sleeve. Gate revived Sigma following his death, because of course he did, and Sigma isn't exactly grateful. Instead, he attacks Gate, and I think X sums this twist up perfectly when he calmly states, "Drat, he's back." Though this time, Sigma really is worse for wear. His speech is slurred, and even X notes that he doesn't seem complete. That proves to be true, as his first form can barely be called a fight, and his next battle body is only skeletal. And just like always, Sigma does promise to come back after his defeat. Our story ends with X and Zero returning to the Maverick Hunters along with Gate. Zero says that Gate is beyond repair, which I say is a load of bull coming from the guy who gets blown to bits every other game. And Alia agrees with me, as she says she'll do her best to fix Gate. Cygnus and Douglas also talk about working to restore the world, and Alia mentions her desire to create a program resistant to all viruses. Oh, and Isaac's soul just kind of left his body at some point. That's never really followed up on, but Alia does compare it to the erasure incident from Mega Man Extreme 2. And it's worth noting that Isaac is most likely another form taken by Dr. Wily, much like how Sergei's was in Mega Man X2. Real quick, let's note that I am of the firm opinion that Mega Man X6 shouldn't exist. X5 is where the story ends in my mind, but that doesn't mean X6 is all bad. For example, I like how it shows the aftermath of the Eurasia incident. Humans being forced underground and Reploids working on the surface to repair the Earth is a great follow-up story. Also, someone picking up a random piece of Zero, because there should be thousands of them by this point, and using it to gain power makes complete sense to me. I can get behind both of these ideas. And on that same note, we also get an ending with Zero sealing himself away in a capsule to rid himself of the Sigma virus. That works as a good tie-in to the Mega Man Zero games that came out shortly after this one. This is also what I was talking about earlier whenever I mentioned that the end of X5 could take place after other games. Zero's ending in X6 here takes place after any of the other X games that have currently been made or will be made. And I really appreciate seeing a genuinely happy X in X6. When Zero is revealed to be alive, X has the biggest smile you'll ever see. We've always known that X and Zero have a great friendship, but the X games are so often focused around somber events, meaning that we don't often get to see X and Zero happy together. I could really do with more of this, as I love seeing a great friendship between battle buddies. But I do have a small problem with the DNA stuff introduced in this game. Basically, it represents the soul of a Reploid and allows them to be resurrected. That makes complete sense, as we've seen in every prior game that bosses always return for the final boss rush. But the one problem I have is Alia mentioning that DNA resurrection is illegal. So much so that Metal Shark Player, one of the investigators X defeats, was killed for resurrecting Reploids, which is how Gate brought him and the other investigators back from the dead. But no one bats an eye when Zero had to be resurrected after his death in X1. Not only was his return celebrated, but Dr. Kane didn't see any kind of punishment for reviving him. To be fair, a new law could have been passed outlawing Reploid resurrection between X2 and X6, but it never comes up. Also, the end with everyone talking about rebuilding, and Alia specifically mentioning a program to counter all viruses, is a little bit too on the nose of a reference to the Mega Man Zero series. It feels less like foreshadowing and more like forcing the narrative, if that makes sense. As far as the gameplay goes, Mega Man X6 retains the same controls that players have in X5. And that's a good thing, as X5 is really where the controls peaked, in my opinion. Keeping them for another game just makes sense. Unfortunately, the level design this time around is quite possibly the worst in the series so far. I get that X6 only had a short time to be made, with it coming out 1 year after X5, but dang does it suffer for it. I kinda get the feeling that the devs just grabbed all of the worst traits of Mega Man levels and littered the stages with them. Like, I hope you like instant kill traps, instant kill spikes, instant kill fire, frequent bottomless pits, alongside annoying level gimmicks such as these dumb ice dropping sections, or how about the nightmare making levels more difficult sometimes with added effects like limited vision. And let's not forget the levels that just throw jumbles of enemies at the player without a care for placement. I loved fighting that stupid red wheel over and over and over again in Blaze Heatnik's stage, especially when combined with instant death fire. Oh yeah, and while I'm at it, screw Nightmare Mother. X6 is also filled to the brim with backtracking for armor parts and other upgrades. That includes from Reploid volunteers, which can become infected by the nightmare. And that infection lasts for the rest of your playthrough unless you reset without saving or start a fresh game. There's also this armor part hidden in the museum, which sends players to random locations through teleporters. And I mean random. I had to run through this level 7 times before it gave me the room with the armor part. On that same note, if a player accidentally finds the secret boss room, they'll have to play the level over again to get to the normal boss. Secret bosses have always been hidden throughout normal levels in the Mega Man X games, but they have never required the player to completely play the level again just to challenge the real boss at the end. I ran into Dynamo, who's here for no real reason by the way, more times than I care to count, and it made this playthrough of the game much longer than it needed to be. And when it comes to armors, X6s are a little lacking to me. We do get a nerfed version of the Falcon armor from X5, which is welcome, but the ultimate armor is no longer obtainable through normal play. Both it and Zero's black armor are back to being cheat codes, which is a bummer. The Blade and Shadow armors added in this game are alright in design. They're far from my favorites, but I wouldn't say I find them offensive in any way. When it comes to the soundtrack, Mega Man X6 offers some of the best music in the series, and I know that's a bold claim, but many of the stages offer up great synth and metal tunes to listen to. I especially enjoy the fact that Infinity Minion stage starts with these blaring horns that give off the same vibes as opening themes from old Super Robot animes, which is perfect since that stage features a giant Reploid in the background constantly harassing the player. Also, voice acting is back again after its absence in X5, but it's only Japanese this time. Considering the track record of Mega Man dubs from this era, I'm okay with that. We also get this fun J-Rock song for the opening, which I wasn't expecting, but it's a welcome one, no matter the case. I guess I should mention that the Japanese came as a surprise to me because I previously only ever played this game through the 2000s X collection, which omits the voice acting and vocal songs. Overall, Mega Man X6 is the weakest of the X games I've played so far. I'd even go so far as to call it a bad game. While it does some interesting things with the post-X5 setting, it feels more like an afterthought than a dedicated entry to the series. And that really bums me out, as I love a game that offers a well-crafted experience. Maybe I'm getting old, but that's doubly true in an era where so many games only offer randomly or semi-randomly generated levels and enemy locations. And Mega Man games are often ones where I love the level design and enemy placement even if I do get frustrated by certain parts of them. But this time around, it felt like I was frustrated most of the time I was playing, rather than just a small bit here or there. If you are looking to check out Mega Man X6 for some reason, or just about any of the other Mega Man X games, you can find them in the Mega Man X Legacy collections, which are on PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. Thanks for sticking with me through this review of Mega Man X6, and until next time, take it easy.